They might talk about humor, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Coming up on Life with Brian.
I was like the richest babysitter in the village because Ravanelli lived next door and used to pay us in £50 notes.
Your dad quite rightly is to say that you can bring anybody home you want, but not a football.
Not a football,
Do
absolutely.
you regret not pursuing Cristiano?
Yeah, I know. I do look back and think maybe I should have tried a little bit harder there. I wanted to be an interviewer. I wanted to write. I was never going to work for a tabloid or a broadsheet. I soon realised that that wasn't actually very realistic.
Hello there. Welcome to another instalment of Life with Brian, hosted by former Celtic and Manchester United employee Brian McClare. You also have myself, Mark, and Matthew Christ. How are we doing, fellas?
Good, thank you. Yeah, you're right. You two went out for a night out in Newcastle recently.
We don't do nights. We're too old for nights.
A day out in Newcastle.
No, we were both tucked up in bed, not together, I might stress, by about 7 o'clock that night. So, yeah.
And
too old for all that.
I hear Brian got recognised, which is rare these days. Because
I'm not quite sure
believe what I
whether he
read,
got recognised or not. That was some thing, because some guy we came out of a pub, Hayley, and a Celtic supporter wasn't sure whether it was me or not, and kept going back and forward. Because when people ask me now whether it's me, my stock answer is usually, well, I used to be him, or sometimes I'm him. It really confuses people. I says, yeah, okay, it is me. Would you like a picture or something like that? He goes, no, I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure it shows your driving licence.
Oh, God.
Like, fuck off. I'm not sure. I'm not proving that.
got ID'd for a selfie.
I don't look in like me and my driving licence anyway, so I don't like...
Same.
As usual, we've got a special guest, and this time we've got a broadcaster who is one of Sky Sports News' most recognisable faces, having been one of its most trusted presenters since 2010. It's a big welcome to Hayley McQueen. How are you, Hayley?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a while. We've been trying to do this for a while, haven't we? But now's the time. Today's the day.
Yeah. Right.
Indeed. And before we move on, and just before you come in, Brian, I want to jump in and say that we've got another guest calling in today to speak with Hayley. It's a big welcome to Simon from Leicester.
Oh, that clip's still doing the rounds, isn't it?
Yeah. There was no chance you were going to escape without us bringing that up. Just to anybody who doesn't know, let's add a bit of context. Please explain who Simon from Leicester is.
Well, at the time I was working for MUTV. We have a phone-in show. It was, of course, absolutely completely live. There was absolutely no delay. How we used to think that was an all right thing to do, goodness knows. We had a caller who was Simon from Leicester. I was hosting the show. Across from me was Gary Pallister and Paul Parker, who were the guests on the Matchday Live programme. And I think Gary was sat legs akimbo. He's a big, tall man as well. His trousers were very tight, and Simon made a comment about the size of his words were his bulge. But Gary didn't quite hear it, and he went, "You what?" So he repeated it as I sat there like aghast, thinking it's quite an inexperienced broadcaster in that sense, like, what do I do here? So I'm just glancing down at the monitor, which was between us. But then, of course, the eye line of the camera, which was on a wide of the studio, without the monitor in shot, looks like I was there having a good look. Oh, so there was just that whole element as Paul Parker's eyes were literally popping out his head at what he'd heard. And we kind of quickly moved on, probably went to an ad break or something. But it was back in the days, luckily, when there wasn't, I don't think there was social media. It certainly wasn't clipped up and put on YouTube, but many years later it was. And then, yeah, it keeps doing the rounds with the young baby-faced me in my youth, tending to present.
That was Pally's normal pose. That wasn't out of the ordinary. He's never sat up properly. Either he was lying down on his sofa or he was slouching around like that.
That's it.
He's still in the same way, you know.
He is.
Particularly
I see him often every time I head back up to the
He
northeast.
lives in Yarnham, didn't he?
He does. He has coffee every morning at the same time in the same little coffee shop. So you know if you're going in, you'll
with the
see
same
Pally
people, isn't it?
with the same people. Yeah.
Well, you have got some amazing early memories of football, haven't you? Particularly the Cliff.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember? Or have you just eradicated it from your mind now?
Yeah, I was so young then, but I mean, I've got a brilliant memory. We've lived a couple of areas of Scotland. We were out in Hong Kong for a bit, a couple of different areas of Manchester or Cheshire. My brother remembers nothing about our childhood. He just remembers Teesside. My sister remembers bits. I'm like, I can remember getting my teeth pulled out. I can remember my first day at school. And I don't think I realised that the Cliff was a training ground for professional footballers or whatever they were at the time, Dad pretending to be a professional and somehow managing it. But I just remember there was like a bank, I think, that went down.
Still there now.
Yeah, and I remember just sliding down it, rolling down it. I don't know why my dad used to take me, but Mum did have 3 kids, 4 and under, so that was probably the reason. I was the eldest, so I did go to a lot more sporting things with my dad. My dad took me to a lot of places as a bit of company, really. And my mum stayed home with what I called the babies. My sister's only like 18 months younger than me. But she stayed home with my wee brother. And actually, I get sent stuff. This is what I love. I mean, I hate social media. I hate X, but equally I love it just for the nostalgia. I don't really post much anymore. I'm too scared to post anything. I'll say I've brushed my teeth and there's something wrong with that. But I quite often get people tagging me and it's like lovely little things about my dad, which I used to kind of be embarrassed about or would dismiss. Now I obviously love it and reply back and thank them and save the little pictures and stuff because it obviously takes on a different meaning since he's not with us anymore. But someone had sent this picture. It's my dad in his full kit, Lou Macari's there, and I'm just there all dressed up in like a fancy little outfit at the Cliff with a little carton of Ribena and a sandwich. I'm like, what was I doing there? And actually, since Kelly Cates got the Match of the Day job, they've brought out a lot of pictures of her when she was a young girl. And I said to her, Kelly, I was like, Kelly, I said, I recognize that dress that you have on when she was like 5 or no, she was about 7 or 8. Sorry. I was about 3 or 4. And I was like, I'm sure I had that same dress. And I went through and it was actually one of the pictures of me at the Cliff in this fancy little outfit. And we'd since worked out that we think when all the dads used to go away on Scotland duty and maybe on trips to Italy, they'd bring like a job lot back. They'd be like, oh, there's a nice dress. They'd all buy it for the kids. Mm-hmm. So me and Kelly have got a similar little wardrobe from when we were young, which is quite cute. So I've got a little picture here. She's with Graham Souness and I'm sat there with my dad and Lou Macari on the training pitch in some fancy little Italian outfit. So, but I don't remember much of it. Then I didn't know my dad was a professional footballer. I had no idea. I didn't really get it. Mum didn't really have football on the TV. Obviously, as we grew up and got older, it was on all the time. It still is in my mum's house. It was just my dad. And luckily, because my dad had so many more famous friends than him. I mean, Brian Robson was one of his best friends. Like my dad was nobody when your best friend is Brian Robson. So that he probably saved the day with us and kept my head on the ground, my feet on the ground and my head from, not getting too big.
Were you the only child there?
No, so the eldest. I'm the eldest.
No, but you're the only child.
Oh, sorry.
Did anybody else bring their kids to the...
I don't know. No idea. I remember having a bath. I remember being in the bath.
Oh, God.
Just had a big
Oh, my, you probably never ill if you'd been in that bath.
No.
You're immune to everything.
Dad's taking me swimming, but no, it was the bath that you were all getting ready to go in.
Would that not have been a thing under Ferguson then, Brian? Kids becoming...
No, I mean, no, it wouldn't have been. I know later on that David Beckham used to bring Brooklyn to training. Well, he used to bring him to the training ground. I don't know whether what the situation. I think Rod Thornley used to look after him until.
Oh my gosh!
Until David was ready to finish to go back. I don't know what the whole idea about that was, but there's certainly nobody else was brought their kids to. No, his whole idea, as you know, having met him several times, is that you go into work, you know. Probably Ron Atkinson maybe has a different view, you know, with particular things, you know. So
I can imagine how many different views they would have had on that.
well, so there's so.
You mentioned your dad there, Hayley. Obviously, we all know, famously he played for Manchester United and Leeds, two big rivals there. So was it ever an issue for you of which team you would support growing up?
No, I am a Man United fan, born in Manchester, so some of the rare ones. But no, it wasn't ever. My mum's family are all from Leeds. A lot of them are Leeds United fans. A lot of them are actually rugby league fans, more so than football. My granddad wasn't very happy when my dad actually came to pick up my mum on their first date, because he was part of that dirty Leeds team. So you can imagine his precious daughter being taken out by some scoundrel. But luckily it worked out. But it was never Leeds. I follow Leeds. And of course, Dad talked so fondly of Leeds United, despite obviously spending a lot of time with Manchester United and making that crossover, which not many people have done. And I remember going into Leeds with him and people shouting at him across the street, or it ended up being a little bit jokey, not too vicious, because he was a 50, 60-year-old man by that point. And of course, he was 6'4" as well. So you're not going out squaring up to my dad and shouting in his face in person, are you? But it was never Leeds. I'm not a Leeds United hater. Kind of wasn't growing up. But I think when someone in your family has had an affiliation with a couple of clubs like we do with Middlesbrough now, I'm kind of like, I think it's all right if you hope that a few of these teams, are okay. And he left friends behind there as well, friends that became mum and dad's really good friends. Eddie Gray is still a very, very close friend, him and his wife Linda to my mum and dad. So yeah, but it was always United. I actually only found out as a very grown-up adult that obviously my dad supported Rangers. He never really grew up telling us that he supported Rangers. Kilburney Ladeside was a very small, very local team, and that was his team. So whenever he was asked what his Scottish team was, that's what he'd say. It's who my granddad played for. He won the Scottish Junior Cup with them, like in the 50s. My granddad was a footballer as well, funnily enough. Again, I found that out as an adult. He played for Accrington Stanley and Hibs. I had absolutely no idea he was a goalie, and then got a normal job at his mid-20s or whatever. And I found that out through blooming David Lloyd at Sky, Bumble. He was like, "Oh, you're a granddad. I had his autograph. I used to be behind goal." And I was like, what is he talking about? And I kind of did know that my granddad had played football, but I didn't know it was of a professional standard. So that's quite cool. And actually, in my dad's office at home, he was a big reader, my dad. We didn't really have that much around, memorabilia, shirts and stuff. He gave most of it away. But we did have a lot of pictures of my granddad on an open top bus parade, and he played in front of 90,000 people at Hampden in the 50s in the Scottish Junior Cup final. So it was always Kilburney Ladeside, this club, but my dad did support Rangers and his brother supported Celtic. He said you just had to pick one of the teams when you were a kid. He said, and at that time I hated my brothers, so we shared a room. He said one went, the other one was green and one was red, just for the hell of it. It wasn't that my parents were particularly Protestant or Catholic or whatever, and they didn't really care. They're like, as long as you're happy and do what you want, support who you want. They were great like that. But yeah.
Hayley, you mentioned about Teesside earlier. Your dad was on the coaching team at Middlesbrough for a good number of years. Yeah. And of course, you would have lived up there as a teenager, I think. So yep. I've heard and read that you had quite a few interesting neighbours when you were there.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Oh, it was brilliant. I was like the richest babysitter in the village because Ravanelli lived next door and used to pay us in £50 notes. I'd never seen one before, obviously, with my dad as a Scotsman. It was 50p I was more used to seeing, not £50. And I remember when my sister first babysat for them, and he'd given her a £50 note. He went round and gave it him back. He's like, no, don't be doing that. Don't be doing that. But yeah, it was cool. So we lived in a house in the village. I moved there. Obviously Dad moved there with Brian when he took over in the 93, 94 season, I think it was. We moved down from Scotland. I've been in Scotland right up until that point. I was sort of 15 years old when we eventually moved down. and bought a house in a quiet little village. Mum is still there in the village. We lived in that house for many years. We've moved around a little bit. We've had about 3 different houses on the same street. As every time they've downsized, we've moved down the road. And the house next door was done up by an architect. It was a lovely, lovely house. And it was a nice, quiet area. And Steve Gibson bought the house and decided that he was going to keep it and use it for players who were coming to the area to settle them in and give them a home. So we had Alan Boksic, Ravanelli, Paul Merson lived there for a little bit. Gaza moved in with Paul Merson. So that was fun. The curtains were always drawn. They definitely weren't in there asleep. But it was good fun. It was quite exciting as well. And, do you remember Christian Carambou? Well, his wife at the time she was that famous, the Wonderbra advert, the Hello Boys, whatever it was. I can't remember what she was called now. Absolutely beautiful, but absolutely lovely. And she used to walk down to the spa every couple of days, not a health spa, the spa on the village green, the shop. And she'd be walking back with like 6 bottles of Evian in one hand and 6 in the other. She didn't like the water in Teesside. And it's like the loveliest water ever. She said, I worry about my skin. She washed her face in Evian.
I was going to say, she have a bath in that.
Every day. I know, yeah. But she was down, they were at the pub. He would go to the local pub, and Ravanelli played darts often with my dad. He used to, I think when my dad won, he'd give him his ties and his suits from Italy. Dad was doing soccer Saturdays at the time, and he was on the panel with Jeff and the guys. He was obviously one of the kind of first to do that. And my dad loved his clothes. And he loved looking smart. And Ravanelli, of course, had the most incredible wardrobe. You'd open up his wardrobes and the ties would just be like swinging from these special racks. And he'd give my dad quite a lot of his ties as well. So most of the stuff he wore on Sky was a bit of Hugo Boss with some of Ravanelli's ties. But it was good fun living next to them all. I think they thought, well, if they put them next to my dad, they'll be in safe hands. Steve Gibson obviously didn't know my dad well enough at the time. And my dad was obviously a bit of a social instigator at United. He wouldn't have lasted long under Fergie, and then was still the same as a coach as well. And my mum used to cook for a lot of them as well, take round hot pots and things like that. Yeah. I'm
just trying to imagine Eva Herzegovina.
That's it.
Herzegovina going down the local Iceland for a frozen Parmo.
I know.
I bet it wasn't bottles of Evian that Gaza brought back from the local spa, but we'll leave that to our imagination.
Yeah.
You're listening to Life with Brian.
The stage direction, and I quote, said, Marlon appears. He is a Greek god, an Adonis, the sort of man that makes women melt.
I thought any therapy would be me sat on a couch with some weird Sigmund Freud bloke asking me if I fancied my mum.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think as a Jambo, that's the biggest challenge. As long as you don't have to look like one, everything's good.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I was thinking about earlier on in your life, Hayley, when you, I believe, had the experience of, or doing some work experience, I think, with on the Richard and Judy show.
I did.
Were they still there then when you were doing that?
They were. They left that year. They did. They left that year. Probably, yeah. I remember they left on Friday the 13th and they threw this massive big leaving bash and they turned up for half an hour, then left because it was one of their kids' birthdays. And they put all this food and drink out. I was like, oh, because I think they kind of left. It wasn't on the greatest terms, was it? I think. But I was at uni living in East London at the time and would travel across London, go down to study in Epsom. Obviously, you're not in uni every day, are you? But I would get up really early, get the Docklands Light Rail, cross London when there was only one building there, when Canary Wharf was there, and that was it. Now there's like tower blocks everywhere. Head down to the South Bank and I would work prepping for the Richard and Judy show and then go to uni. I don't know how I managed that. And it was about an hour and a half just to get to the studios and then another hour and a bit to get down to where I was studying. But it was good fun. It was really good fun.
So no interesting stories about what happened there. I've got this great memory of Richard being on his hands and knees underneath Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh.
Looking for the wings.
What?
Come on, man. Come on.
Gosh.
This isn't a cheese dream, is it?
Yeah, remember the film? Yeah, the wings.
Yeah,
He's
the film
on
was
his hands and
filmed.
knees underneath looking for these wings.
Oh my
And,
God.
and he's asking the guy who owned it, where are they? And all that. I'm like, you're, without saying to him, you're an idiot, man, but I can't say on television that you're an idiot. He was like, yeah, on his hands and knees looking for underneath.
Oh my gosh.
Where are
The
they?
area, they filmed Chitty Chitty Bang Bang at the end of my street, apparently, somewhere near. Yeah. In fact, the hotel from Fawlty Towers was up the road as well. It's not there anymore. They knocked it down, but it was based on somewhere in my little area. That's my claim to fame about where I live, in the middle of nowhere. When I was there, I remember, so I was just like a runner. I was the assistant to the assistant's assistant. But I did actually work in the fashion department for quite a bit. So I'd sometimes go out with the models on the shoots and help them with the clothes and things. But a lot of the time I was in the studio, weren't really allowed in the green room. And sometimes they would have guests come in after you've finished filming a live show. If it were a big name guest, they would interview them and then they would put it into the show the following day. And that had happened. I remember when Rod Stewart had come in, and I was just nobody working there at the time. I was just some girl at uni doing a work placement. And my dad was like, I'd said, oh, Dad, we've got Rod coming in tomorrow. And he's like, you must say hi, you must send him my love. You've got to say hi. And we've got great pictures at home of Rod in a tartan hat and my dad in a dressing room with, tartan scarves, and great pictures of kind of Rod and Scotland in the sort of glory days, if you can call it that. But, when they still have good players, but when they had the greats. And my dad, used to hang out with Rod a bit in his youth. And Rod had come in and we'd finished filming and I thought, do I say anything? Don't I? I'm not sure. And I went to go in the green room. They were like, oh, you can't really come in here. The guest, this is just for the guests. I said, oh, well, would it be okay if I say like hi to Rod? I just want to pass on my regards. I said, well, actually, it's sort of my dad. They were like, it's not really the done thing. I said, no, and I was like bumbling away. I was like, my dad sort of knows Rod. And they just looked at me as if like, what is she on about? And I went up to him and I was so nervous. I was like, my dad wanted me to make sure I said hi. And he was like, and who's your dad? And I was like, well, he used to play for Scotland. And he just looked at me and went, oh, and I went, Gordon McQueen. He goes, I've just looked at you and thought Gordon McQueen. He was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, does anyone know who her dad is? Her dad is a legend. And it was lovely hearing all about, I was mortified. I remember having like a rash across my chest because I was really embarrassed, but it was great because I'd obviously not really got paid much attention to by Richard and Judy, but they had much bigger things to be worrying about and tons of staff there. They're not going to know anyone, least of all, a 19-year-old kind of intern. And it was really lovely. It was one of the sort of the first times I'd heard somebody that was super mega famous speak really glowingly about my dad and the Scotland team of that time. And that was lovely. And then I got knowledged a lot after that. So I went up in the world this morning. So thanks to my dad for that.
So was this all part of a big burning ambition of yours to go into broadcasting then? Was it, obviously got football in the family, and was it a natural progression?
Probably not presenting. I wanted to get into reporting. I mean, I'd actually studied blooming fashion at university. It's like fashion promotion and illustration. There was journalism in there. I thought I was going to go work for like Tatler or Vogue or Grazia or Red Magazine or something like a lot of my friends did. But like my final dissertation, I actually did, I made a little video. It was called, From Best to Beckham, the Fashion of Football. And I looked at, how footballers were now fashion icons. And I graduated the year of 2002. Of course, David Beckham was on the front cover of sort of The Face. He was on GQ magazine. I did a little work experience there under Dylan Jones. And it was everything that I went back to. And I was like, this is what I know, sport and football. I also did my final major, was the fashion of football from Best to Beckham. And I kind of looked at all the things that they advertised from like sausages to milk and various things like that, and how it changed over the years and how players kind of earned money off these commercial deals. And then my other one was on a football kit, which I absolutely loved. I loved studying it, all the different materials, manufacturing, where sort of colours had been associated from I remember quite a lot of these stories and really getting into that. I went out to Italy and looked at sort of, went to one of these places that manufacture. I spoke to people at the time, Admiral and Adidas, managed to get in touch with somebody at Nike. Yeah, so that was really cool. I loved doing that. And obviously that incorporated the fashion element and the football element. And then I worked kind of as a runner and in TV and radio for a good few years before eventually going to MUTV, where I just wanted to be an interviewer. I wanted to write. I was never going to work for a tabloid or a broadsheet. I soon realized that that wasn't actually very realistic. Sky Sports News was going, and you had all these sort of up and coming presenters who went on to do great things that were just kind of starting out in their careers. And I did probably think, oh, maybe I could do that one day, but I wasn't like the most super confident person in the world. I was confident in my knowledge, but I'd never done any presenter training. There weren't kind of media courses where you learned to present. And it wasn't until I think I was 28 or 29 before I actually started doing presenting. I was given a chance at MUTV and I loved it and I grasped it, and I was there for 4 years, and that was probably the most fun job I've ever had, especially when the team were just doing so incredibly well. And I look back at who the team were and all these great names that I got to interview and stuff. Then went and worked for what was Al Jazeera at the time, which is now beIN. And then, yeah, went back to Sky in 2010 and I've never left. So that's my career in long short.
Yeah, I mean, you're one of many famous footballing daughters. I mean, you mentioned Kelly Cates there, and Kirsty Gallagher, and a few others.
Yeah.
Have you had to spend your whole career sort of justifying that, or do you find that actually it can open doors legitimately? I know it's people point the finger if your dad's well known, and people say, oh, it's who you know, not what you know. But I imagine that actually does help you if you're looking for.
Yeah, as I've got older now, and I'd like to think working in the game for such a long time, people are like, oh, okay, she knows her stuff. Nobody's questioning that now, and I love it if I get in a taxi driver and someone actually just talks to me about football, or you're on a train or somewhere, rather than, I'm like, oh, they're asking my opinion on something. So that's nice. But that did take a long time. But I will just hold my hands up. My dad absolutely got me the job at Sky, but I'm not going to say no to going and doing work experience somewhere where my dad was working. Absolutely not. But what he also did give me, not just a foot in the door, he gave me the knowledge, the love, the understanding. I've seen it from him playing football to coaching. He managed as well. We've moved around an awful lot. I've seen what it's like when you have somebody come back home on the coaching staff, having been relegated, being promoted, working under lots of different managers. He was really lucky. He worked under Strachan. We came into Middlesbrough. He worked with Gareth at Middlesbrough. He was kept on for a long time after Brian Robson. I think he just hid in the academy department and just, oh, well, if nobody notices me, no one's going to get rid of me. But everybody loved having him around, I think, as well. And he was kind of, when you had these other younger coaches in, particularly someone like Gareth, I think they probably liked having someone a bit more experienced and older around. So yeah, he absolutely gave me the foot in the door, but it's keeping in and it's staying in. He loved playing golf. I grew up very much being a massive fan of golf. My granddad was big into his cricket. So I've always been I was quite sporty myself, not now. I just watch it all. It's terrible, really. I've never played cricket. I never played football. I attempted to play golf. I was so bad. I couldn't handle being bad. I went to the driving range a lot. I used to caddy for my dad. I was like, if I can't be good at this, I just don't want to do it. But I was, dragged around by him across golf courses in Scotland in the freezing cold and taken to football matches from such a young age. It was just so part of me. So it just felt natural, actually, that the job I ended up doing was something not only that I loved, but I knew a lot about. And Brian will remember back in the days, we had to be pitch side reporting on all the academy games when the young lads were coming out without even names on the back of their I didn't know who half of them were. You'd get given a team sheet, you'd just be making it up, what formation you thought they'd be playing in. But it was such a good grounding and learning. And I've always felt really comfortable being in and around football. I can't imagine doing any other job.
Yeah, you mentioned MUTV there, and I was going to say about what a glorious time it must have been to cover the club being a United fan. Did your paths ever cross at the club? Were you there when Brian?
Yeah, I used to cover the academy games, and Brian was in charge, didn't you?
I used to ignore her.
You did.
You used to ignore most people when they wanted an interview with you, didn't you? I mean, we've had Jeff Shreves on here before, and you said...
Yeah, you had to do the things. They had this little thing when I was doing the reserves. They had a little competition. I don't know if Hayley was involved in it to see which somebody they could make me smile, you know. part of the game, you know, like to say that they didn't. And of course, they failed, you know.
Of course.
But what is that? What I liked, and it's when you were there, there was a couple of things that, you know, you mentioned that Ronaldo would notice if you had some new item of clothing on, and I was just wondering, did any other players notice anything like that? And your dad, quite rightly, because I was exactly the same with my children. You know, I used to say that you can bring anybody home you want, but not a football.
Not a footballer.
Player.
That was it, and that was absolutely
Do you regret
it.
not pursuing Cristiano? Because your life might have been slightly different, you know.
Yeah, I know. I do look back and think maybe I should have tried a little bit harder there. But again, do you know what? Like, I was so conscious of trying to make sure that I was respected. And you would turn up to sort of the awards and things, and all the players were there with their partners, and I'm just some young girl there flouncing about with a microphone, you know, around their partners. I didn't want them to think that there was a girl in there as a threat going out with one of the other players, or trying to get with one of the players or something. I was very, very conscious of that. Luckily, I ended up with somebody who is a chef, so yeah, that's come in a lot handier. He doesn't make the money, but he cooks for me every day. I don't know how to work the oven. He doesn't chef anymore, but that was his passion and his love. But yeah, I was very, very, very conscious of it at the time. I thought, if I'm going to have a long-lasting career here, I can't suddenly be in the papers dating one of the players, regardless of whether they're single. I became a little bit friendly with Owen Hargreaves, and I did quite like Owen Hargreaves. I'll admit to that, but we were just friends. It was quite nice. Because, he was intelligent. I found him interesting to speak to. He joined the club not long after I'd been there at MUTV. He was trying to settle into a new area. And I remember having a few lovely little exchanges with him. But obviously nothing ever goes further, does it? It's nice to see him doing so well now. I'm not surprised he's obviously working in the media. Rio was really, really good with me. But again, Rio and I had a bond over, he'd left Leeds United, played for United. He was a number 5. He had a lot of respect for my dad, and he was really, really good with me. I'm obviously not in touch with Rio now, but I've hosted events and I see him, and it's like seeing an old friend. It is really nice. The same happens with Cristiano. I'd met him many, many years after he was at United. He was like, oh my gosh. He was like, look at you, you're doing so well. And I was like, you're Ronaldo, and look at you, and you are doing really well. But it was lovely. I kind of see them as people as opposed to the multi-millionaire, untouchable footballers. And I think that had helped because I was quite young going in there and had seen a lot of them grow. And it's one of my favorite things was seeing so many of these guys in the academy breaking into the first team, doing really well. You kind of like felt really proud of them. So I don't know what it must have been like being their manager and coach and knowing you had a hand in that. Whereas I was just there on the sideline seeing it, but seeing how these young boys were turning into these men and growing up. And you're like, God, I was sat there doing interviews with them, teaching them not to put their hands down their shorts and trying to look at the camera, and you're giving them a little bit of media training.
Going back to Pally again.
That's it, yeah. And they've all gone off to play for different clubs. Some of them are coming to retirement now. I'm like, oh my gosh. When you see these players that I was covering as a reporter coming through the academy and they're announcing their retirement, it does make you feel like about 1,000,010.
This is a question, I suppose, for both of you. How was MUTV viewed from both sides of the fence? Because, Brian, I suppose from your point of view, I've been on the staff, there may have been a bit of suspicion. I mean, we all know how it ended with Roy Keane, and then, Hayley, you were almost trying to be objective, and I know you were employed by the football club, but you didn't want to be a mouthpiece just for the club. So was there a sort of an element of fear that you might be upsetting the gaffer and the management?
Sometimes, but to be honest, it was very rose-tinted, especially then. Yeah. I wouldn't have dared do a post-match interview with Fergie and question anything about anything. Who am I to do that? It was just, I was like, stick to the basics of journalism. Why, how, who, when, what. Just keep it simple. Let him do the speaking. Never put an opinion into a question. Never suggest anything. Obviously, that would change when I went to Sky and I had to learn a different type of reporting and questioning because you're looking for a news line. Back then, you were just trying to make sure if you did interview Sir Alex or Brian or someone off the back of a game when it hadn't been the result you'd hoped for, that you weren't just going to further piss them off, basically.
Well, you wouldn't be doing particularly that to me, but I was just,
No.
did you ever get the wrath of Ferguson for? Because it wasn't always about something that you might have done.
No.
It's things in his head, and you might have just happened to be the one there, then you were getting it because you were part of that arm of the company or that bit of the company, you know. So did you ever
I don't think
touch
I
of
don't
the
think
hairdryer, or was he always?
No.
It may not. They may have been, but
Never,
more
always very
empathetic because of your background as well. You know?
Yeah, and do you know what? I
he-
actually
he
think,
had-
as
he would
bad
have
as
been
this
accused
is
of
to
similar
say,
things because Darren was playing under him as well and all that. You
Yeah.
know, so.
but very much I do think as well, and I'll make no bones about it, using being a female to my advantage as well. But sometimes I might ask the same question that Jeff Shreves might have asked, but they're not expecting it from me. Or I'd kind of do it in a more playful manner or use the fact that I was just a young girl to my advantage because that's just how it was back then. I wouldn't do that now if I was starting out. Plus, there were so many more females in the industry, and I wouldn't want anyone to have to feel like they would do that. But I would sometimes go in with a couple of questions. I remember sitting down. You know, we used to have to sit in the room downstairs in Carrington in the left in the corner when you'd be waiting to do sort of the pre-match stuff or like a feature. It was around selling a player. Can't remember who it was. And there'd been a lot of noise about it, but I obviously waited till the very, very, very end of the interview to get that in there. And he wasn't giving away much. And I went back in with it again. And I could tell he was really angry that I'd even asked it. And afterwards, he was like, You're not be putting that out on MUTV. I was like, well, I've just interviewed you for MUTV. So hopefully it will be able to go out. And then you'd get a little message from Karen. Yeah, could you not include that last question? He'd give me an answer. He would give me an answer. But then you'd get a firm, don't use that.
Yeah. So it was
Be used.
doctored. It was doctored in some way, or at least reviewed.
Yeah, well, it would,
Edited.
I mean,
Edited, yeah.
certainly from my point of view, and there was nothing on it he would be ever consider that it was going to be an issue, you know. I mean, of course, there would be just the same as the things we were talking about earlier. There'd be plenty of people watching it and looking at what was on it and all that kind of thing, and use that for their own copy, I suppose. But you're not. You're certainly with the way that the manager was then, you know, if you can't, if you're there to be given some bits of information that help the club's own TV channel, however, he would want to make sure that that it was to his satisfaction. I mean, there's some things he would allow just depending on what kind of mood he was in, or indeed what kind of message he would want to be sending out, because it's very useful propaganda tool for him as well at the time.
But this makes it more mysterious how your Chocky's diary in the magazine was always left alone.
I don't. Well, I mean that got the same kind of thing with that as well, though, didn't it? You know, so you understood, and it's a bit like what Hayley was saying as well. I kind of understood what I was going to get away with, but I did get a couple of rows about it. You know, particularly when I was doing it when I was a coach, Hayley, you know, because when you write it or you put it in and all that, I don't know if it was like for you, maybe it was like for you for MUTV, but everybody used to come and tell you what was going on just because I was doing this, because a lot of them thought it was hilarious to be telling it, because I wanted it to be whimsical, you know. The players would come and tell you about other players that done daft things or whatever, or I'd see things, or you get stories from the kit and all that kind of thing, and I was just trying to disseminate what I thought would be funny to put in, and a few times I got hauled up because people just get sensitive. But it was 6 weeks in between I'd written something and then it couldn't been in the magazine, you know. So when he's pulling me up about it, you know, you and your fucking diary, you know, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
Fucking, and it's just some, I thought it was just ridiculous anyway. But one of the players who'd been, like I'd mentioned, the first team players. I'm a coach, and first team player a bit upset because I'd found out that what car he was driving. He only because he got hammered for driving this car, and he only brought it in once. That shows you sort of things that can happen in football dressing rooms, and I just put it in. I didn't even mention his name. They didn't say what player it was. I mean, all they knew, everybody in Carrington knew who it was, but none of the public knew who it was because they didn't say. So I'm getting pulled up for an anonymous story because he's read it 6 weeks later and he's got annoyed and he said to the manager, whatever, and I'm like, oh, come on, man, this is just, it's supposed to be, how can you survive in this dressing room if you get annoyed at me not even mentioning his name in what I thought and still think was a humorous story, But you learn from to the next period of time to be a bit more careful what you say, And then when he stopped, I eventually packed it in because when David Moyes took over, because not all of it was true, So sometimes I would just make up things about.
So what you're saying is it wasn't much fun when Fergie wasn't there to antagonize.
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't want it to be. I didn't want. So you're again running like 6 weeks behind. There's so many things happened right in that first period of time. When Sir Alex decides that he's going, so that kind of thing. But the day he decides he's going and what happened in the process of that day, and then not soon after that, David gets the job and comes in, and then. There's a complete staff overhaul with regards to the first team, and then there's all these other people coming in, and there was loads of things that happened. You could see, some people. I mean, I played against Chris Wood several times, so there was just lots of bits and pieces. I'd heard of new bits about Jimmy Lumsden. I'd come across. Some of the other ones, and then you had Giggsy being involved as well, so I thought, I can't be doing this because I don't want it. It's going to be difficult enough as you can, looking back, but I knew that it would be difficult enough the truth without me sort of taking my version of what the truth might well be, or what I think was funny, and I'm quite fairly sure that as much as Moyes has got a sense of humour, he wouldn't have been the same sense of humour as me. And I didn't want it to look as if I was undermining what they were trying to do. I knew it would be very difficult. I didn't think it would be as difficult for everyone as it has been since Fergie packed it in, but that just thought, then I'd had a really good run at it, in two separate times, really, one as a professional, one as a coach,
professional to the core there, Brian. See, if only more journalists.
I just knew that it would be. I just knew it was the wrong thing, So I'd say no, just forget it now. Done, Fergie's time,
Mark, you had something to.
You're the doyenne of Sky Sports News these days, Hayley. How do you feel things have changed in recent times on the channel? And how do you see it being in 5 years' time?
Gosh, who knows? Linear TV, I mean, it's completely changing. It's changing every year, every season, as is like everything, the way we consume news, the way we get our news. It is different. Sky Sports News, yes, it isn't what it used to be, but nothing is it now? Especially when, in your hand, you can get lines that you could only get if you tuned into Sky Sports News. Like everything, it evolves. We've trialed using sort of different fans on the channel instead of just pundits. Sometimes things haven't worked. Other times it's been great to get, fans back and on the channel and give them a voice, which is what we're doing a little bit of now. I come from an era where, I don't watch a lot of these YouTube channels of the YouTubers. Some of them I do, some of them I love. Some of the, the social media influence and stuff in sport are brilliant. They've been really handy and useful and entertaining, but I'm not on top of everything. I'm just not of that generation, but that's fine. I'm not going to be. So I remember when we first started using influencers and things on the channel, it was like, I could not get my head around it, but there's got to be a space for everybody, hasn't there really? So, and people are going to want to have a voice, and we're going to want to give them a voice, and trying out different things. Everything at Sports News is now, well, a lot of things in our gallery are automated. We've got a lot less people, so it's a lot quieter, the newsroom. Quite a few people work from home. So it's not the newsroom it used to be sort of 15 years ago when I joined. But like, everything is changing. TV is changing. The one thing that won't ever change is watching live sport. That's the one thing that you tune in at a specific time. If you're not at the game and you follow something live, and you would tune in and out of Sports News to get the news in and around that. So I think as long as we've got live football, and that is still thriving, whether it be EFL, Premier League, Scottish Prem, whatever it may be, WSL, then Sports News still has a place to cover all of that and pick up on all the other things that we do really well as well, like your tennis and your cricket, your rugby league, a lot of the women's sports. But it is changing. We don't have as many reporters. We don't have as many presenters. We're all single-headed right now. So I think everything has been stripped back a little. Not because I think the channel is failing, still doing really well. Our viewing figures are actually, we have quite good meetings every now and again. A lot of our clips get clipped up and put on social media. I did Ref Watch on Monday. We had, I think there was 282,000 views on a 10-minute clip from Ref Watch. So people are still watching. They're just watching differently and at different times and tuning in differently. Some parts of the day are watched for longer. Some are, you just kind of flick around. I'd like to think we're still the place to go if a big news story happens, if there's even horribly, we cover a lot more tragedies and scandal now, and we can put more on that and bring it to life with picture, or respectfully tell the story of somebody's life if they've passed, as opposed to it just being a line on X or on social media. But I just think everything in the world is changing in the way we consume everything, and we just got to roll with it. I still love it. Like, I love it. I enjoy it. I would have left a long time ago if I didn't. I feel happy there. I love the fact that I'd love to go and work on a major tournament. We don't have the rights to that. I'd love to go and present and work on a World Cup and a Euros. But equally, if I went and worked for a channel that I was just doing football, I'd really miss golf. I'd really miss bits of tennis that I get. I'd miss the fun of the NFL. I'd miss all the cricket, So I think as an all-rounder, as I am, I'd like to think, and the unpredictability of the breaking news as well, like, I still thrive off it. No day is the same.
I think it's fair to say Sky Sports and Sky Sports News has been revolutionary over the last 30 years. And I've certainly, since we've all been watching the game, do you think, we mentioned some of your colleagues in the past there, Gabby Logan and Kirsty Gallagher, etc. Do you think it's been a sort of a champion of the female broadcaster? Because it seems to me since the days of Sky Sports News, it's more the norm that we see female broadcasters, but particularly in sport. Do you think Sky Sports has played a big role in that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think definitely in the very early days before I was there were maybe people on screen that weren't there just for footballing knowledge, but somebody who might have been a really great presenter, that might have looked a certain way, that had potential. Whereas I definitely think, certainly now and for a long, long, long time, you have to know your sport. You have to be a journalist. You have to know your stuff. But I think Sky have been brilliant at giving females a chance, a voice, opportunities, not just in front of screen, behind as well. We've had female reporters working. Look at Bianca Westwood. She's been there, or had been there, for decades at Sky. One of the very first in-vision female reporters. People often forget. We talk about Gabby Logan and Kelly Cates and people, and Kirsty's. What about Helen Chamberlain? She absolutely, for me, was one of the. If you watch terrestrial TV, Denise Van Outen was your daytime sweetheart. For me, it was someone like Helen Chamberlain. Like, I absolutely just thought she was incredible. I loved Soccer AM. I loved everything she brought to that. Claire Tomlinson paving the way for female reporters as well, and doing what she did all those, many decades before. And I definitely think Sky have opened other broadcasters' eyes to using females on their channels and not being afraid to. I think the reason they did employ a lot of people who were daughters of back in the day was because we were a safe pair of hands, and I think we could be trusted. And we also had a bit of intel on stuff. We could bring stories to the channel. But what we did was we brought safety for them, knowing that we were in it, I think, for the right reasons and had grown up with football. A lot of girls now have watched football for the last 10, 15 years. 15 years ago when I started out, you couldn't watch women's football. It wasn't as popular, or a lot of females weren't watching men's football and hadn't grown up with it because you weren't playing, you weren't kicking about in the playground. I certainly wasn't when I was growing up. There were no girls in the schools kicking a football. If you went to go and play down the park and wanted to kick a football, you get called a tomboy or worse. Whereas it's just completely acceptable and normal now for girls to be into football, to like football. Dads are taking their kids to football. Dads are taking young girls to football, and they've now all grown up and want to work in the industry.
But you mentioned there the evolving way that we consume sport, phones and what have you. But on the flip side of that, there's a sort of negative side. And how do you feel about things like social media and trolling and that kind of? Is that something? I think you said at the start you're not really a big one for social media. So is it something that you just try and avoid? And
yeah, Twitter used to be great when it was Twitter and it was used for the right reasons. And I followed a lot of football journalists and sports journalists and would get little bits from that. And I would know which of the journalists would have the intels at which different clubs, which papers I wanted to follow, and other channels and other, reporters and experts. It's just, there are too many fans who are just out there to attack and to create scandal and to make themselves Insta famous or X famous, or we've even got, like, you just look at, I don't even want to get into it, but like Joey Barton being given a platform to write what he writes and says what he feels and thinks, like that should not be allowed. I've had some horrific messages. I've had some awful ones when I used to work up on the Scottish Premiership, especially if I turn up at Celtic. I've had like threats. Okay, there were empty threats, but it was horrible. I was pregnant at the time, I remember, and someone was like, I know where you go when you get here. Don't ever show up here again. We know you're this. You grew up Rangers. How dare you think that you can come and report on an Old Firm match? And how dare you this? You've got no place in Scotland. You're not Scottish. I don't mind being called not Scottish, whatever. I'm British, but my dad was a proud Scot and I support Scotland, but I don't really care what you have to say. When I was a lot younger, I did take it to heart, especially when they'd be writing about your appearance or something. Now I just don't care. I don't really read it. I don't look in my DMs. Just not bothered. Just don't go there.
We're going to wrap up soon. I just wanted to chat to you briefly. We mentioned your dad a couple of times on the show so far. It's been over a couple of years now since he sadly passed away. I just wondered, do you find yourself appreciating his achievements in the game more so now he's gone than when you mentioned it earlier that, when you grew up, you didn't really know he was a footballer. That was just his job. But looking back in hindsight now, I guess you can sort of look at his achievements and probably be prouder than you were at the time. Yeah,
it's really nice. And what was lovely and what we were very, very lucky to have, even though obviously when I've had work colleagues whose family members have passed and they're in work, they disappear for a couple of days, they come back, you say your condolences, they have some time off for a funeral, and then it's kind of forgotten. When you have somebody whose parent, especially my dad worked and I'm in the industry that he worked in, it obviously was big news. And I was off for a couple of weeks. I was off for the week before he passed as well, because we knew he wasn't doing so well. But I was quite grateful of that. There was no hiding. There was no, I'd go back to work and a couple of weeks later we'd have people returning from holiday. And so it was very much, I was getting condolences about my dad for a long time after he passed. And that felt a bit weird. I just want to get back into work. Let's just get back and forget about it. You can't just forget about it. And anytime I'd go out somewhere, I'd go to an event or I'd see old teammates of his, they would come up to me. And I did find that a little hard at first, but then I started to embrace it and love what they were telling me about my dad and ask for the stories and thrive off it. A lot of the stuff I'd not really heard before, a lot of the stuff I had heard before and then didn't want to hear again, all the adventures he'd got up to. My dad was a bit of a rascal, but I love it and I love looking back and I love seeing a lot of the footage and the tributes after he passed. I didn't look at anything, certainly I think for a good few months after he died, but I started to read a lot of the people who'd sent me really lovely messages to the family. I printed a lot of stuff out, read lots of clips in the paper, heard sort of, lovely words from former teammates of his and have very much kind of kept it. I will reopen that box and have a look at it again at some point. And it is lovely. And people would come up to me. I remember like many years ago, and he was still, oh, your dad, oh, he was great. He was a legend. I was like, all right, okay, yeah, thanks. I would never know really what to do with it. Now I'm like, yeah, he was. My dad was brilliant. My dad, like, tell me more. I want to know more. And it's lovely because my dad would never brag about what he did or what he achieved. He was never really one to, he loved telling stories, but they were more like the stories of the nights out and the fun and the stuff that he used to get up to whilst he was a player, long after he was a player. He never really talked about playing or what he achieved or anything like that. It was always the off the pitch stuff, as Brian, I'm sure, will well know.
Yeah,
and there were a lot of fun stories.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I was going to say, have you got a sort of a famous Gordon McQueen moment? But I guess, Brian, you'd probably be somebody that could tell us a little bit more about the man.
Well, they used to, because I went to United and Gordon had not long left, but you the same kind of thing, stories perpetuated. So, Robbo would be telling you stories about him, Kevin Miranda would be telling stories about him, Norman Whiteside, because they were all the gang that went out on a Sunday, for a couple of drinks. But I had the pleasure of sharing a room with your dad after the dinner that Michael Parkinson used to host.
Oh, yes.
So for whatever reason, I'd never played with your dad. I was just a wee bit younger, but we shared a room, which was like a great experience, So. And what I remember, there's two particular things I remember, because it's a really small room and all that, and it's got you kind of used to, because had roommates all the time, it could probably seem quite odd in most other circumstances. You go to a room with somebody you'd never really, I'd met him a few times before, and I knew an awful lot about him, but we shared a room, and so we ended up going to bed. But he had this, which I looked at, I thought it was, I don't know if he's still around, but he had a toilet bag that it looked as though it was like, could have been your granddad's toilet bag. It was a really old, obviously very nice quality at its time, but he'd had this toilet bag probably since he'd been very, very young, and it had some really nice perfume. That's what I particularly remember about him, But funny, he was one of the,
I think Joe Jordan bought him that for one of his birthdays in his 20s, and he kept it.
It was
from Italy, Italian leather.
They were the entertainment that night, him and Joe,
I'll bet.
The two of them were a bit like, how can I do now? They were asking them questions, but they were telling different stories, different to the questions that were asked, because that's what they wanted to, and the big difference between Joe as a character and how he's like, and your dad, worked through it really, really well. You could see why they were friends, like Joe being more of a straight guy and your dad being the comic,
Yeah.
But
and it was a lovely partnership. They used to bring the best out of each other. He would keep my dad calm. My dad would bring a little bit of life out of Joe.
Obviously, we've seen the link to persistent heading of a football and the onset of vascular dementia late in life as an effect of that. And of course, it's claimed a number of ex-pros over recent years. Does what happened to your dad in his latter years leave a bittersweet taste to his illustrious career in the game?
Yeah, it definitely does. I'd have liked to have thought that my dad might have continued doing a bit more on Sky for years. And he couldn't when I look back now. My dad was only in his early 60s when he started getting signs of something not quite being right. We just put it down to just getting a bit older, forgetful. He'd obviously overcome throat cancer many years before as well, so his voice became a bit husky and hoarse. And I probably would have thought my dad would have worked a little bit longer in the game. He was still doing, co-coms for Sky. He was still loving that. Steve Gibson had offered him a job back at Middlesbrough. Don't know whether it was scouting or consulting or something. He'd opened the door to him on many occasions, but my dad just didn't feel quite well enough in his head to be there, but never really spoke enough about it. But I remember him saying to my mum, there's something not right with my head. There's something not right with my head. And he would get a bit forgetful about things and just think he'd go to make a cup of tea and he'd be like, kind of, he'd just walk away because he couldn't remember. It was the tea bag that went in, and then the hot water, and then the milk. He knew all these components, but it was a very strange dementia. He knew all of us to the very end. One of the last times I saw him, he like, "Hi, Hayley." He was bedridden by that point. That was the last thing he said. He knew me the second I walked in. He knew my little girl's name. He knew everything. It was different parts of his brain that kind of disappeared, which obviously, dementia comes in different forms, but to me, that was head injury dementia. It was trauma to his head. It wasn't just, oh, he's in his 80s, he's got dementia, and you will gradually get worse to the point of you don't recognize your family members. Dad's was very different. His balance went a few years before he passed away. It was almost like his brain couldn't determine which leg went in front of which. He would kind of shuffle along. He had dodgy ankles anyway, but he certainly wouldn't have been shuffling around. And he had dysphagia, which is a swallowing issue, which we only learned was part of dementia. We thought it was to do with the throat cancer all these years later, but they were like, no, his throat is good, it's healthy. My dad actually was a lot healthier in his later life than he certainly was for a bit through the middle of his career, when he liked a bit of a drink and stuff. Never really drank much. Later in life, we'd give him a pint of Ribena and he'd be quite happy with that. But we thought it was maybe the throat cancer, but in actual fact, it was called dysphagia, which is what, unfortunately, Jeff Astle passed with. And when we were speaking to Dawn Astle, who's a huge campaigner of obviously, brain health and things like that, with her dad, Jeff, passing away, he actually choked on some chicken because he couldn't swallow it. He couldn't swallow food properly. And that's what had happened to my dad. And my dad lost a lot of weight very dramatically. And that's what made him very, very weak towards the end. So it was kind of strange symptoms of dementia. I didn't know these. I just thought dementia, Alzheimer's, you just start to forget things. You get a bit confused. And then you start to kind of lose your mind, lose your memory. And then you kind of disappear as a person. That wasn't like that with my dad. It was lots of different physical things that he lost. Hence, we were really keen for him to have this post-mortem and donate his brain to medical science. And I had that chat with him. My mum didn't want to have that chat. My sister and my dad are two very alike, whereas I'm kind of the eldest. I was like, well, I said, Dad, if ever comes a point where you're not here, what do you want to do? He was like, do what you want with me. I don't care. I said, oh, but if we could maybe donate your brain. He was like, please. Yes, I would like that. He goes, that's one thing I would like. I was like, okay. And he's like, but don't worry, I'm not going yet. My dad, he pretended he didn't have anything wrong with him because he was still protecting me and my sister and brother. We all knew when he was dying, and we knew he was getting worse. But he didn't want us to think. He didn't want us to know, and he would pretend, oh, don't worry, I'm getting some physio soon. It's all right, Dad. Don't worry, I'll be out of this bed soon. I'm not well at the moment. And like, obviously we all knew, but he was very, very protective to the point. And the one thing maybe I have a little bit of regret about, I didn't really sit with my dad and reminisce about his past, because I thought if I do that, he's going to know that I know that he's not got long. And I didn't want him to think that I even knew. I just pretended that everything was fine. He was just in bed because he wasn't feeling too great. And he was in bed for like almost a year, on and off, really. And he hated us seeing him like that. And I do think, obviously, the dementia 100% robbed him of being a granddad to grandkids who are all growing up. My little one was only 3 when he passed. My sister had a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. My brother's had a baby since my dad's passed. And my dad's big dream was that my brother would do really well for himself and meet someone and have a baby. And the week my dad passed away, my brother actually went on a date around that time because he was back home quite a bit. So it was almost like he left and gave him a girlfriend. And that's lovely. They've bought a house together. So I do get upset when I think of all the things that he's missing out on. And I do 100% believe it was from heading of a football. My dad's parents didn't have any Alzheimer's or dementia in the family. We didn't have anything in the family at all. We've got all of his post-mortem results, and he did have CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, whatever it's called. And we've been obviously waiting for this inquest, which is one of the reasons I've not been able to come on here for a while, because I was worried about how much I was allowed to speak about. And we've got the inquest in January. So Yeah, I'm putting together lots of the information for that. And look, we'll see. The footballing authorities, I don't think wanted an inquest to happen, which is why we had a couple of pre-inquests. And like, I get it, but I also don't get how they wouldn't want to know if somebody died as a result of heading of a football because of the duty of care that they owe the current footballers. Surely that's more research. Surely that's more knowledge. Surely one more case is helpful, but I don't think they see it like that.
No, absolutely. Well, before we wrap up this section, Brian, have you got anything else you wanted to mention, or are we all good?
There was just one thing, really, that's with my in-depth research, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, Hayley, was when you were babysitting for the Ravanellis and you were rummaging about in their house, apart from the ties, did you find any other interesting things when you were exploring?
No, I just knew. I knew where
pictures of the Pope or anything like that. Signed
No,
photographs of the Pope or anything like that. You know.
he had a healthy wine collection and a lot of ice cream. And I remember when I was one of the times when I'd babysat, I was only 16, 17 myself, and I got locked. In fact, it wasn't babysitting. I'd got locked out of our house, so I just knocked on, thinking they might have a key because we had a key to their house, and he was just in, and he was in his Middlesbrough Football Club shorts, on all fours, riding his little boy around the house, like as if he was like a horse. It was hilarious. And I just sat there and he was like, would you like some lunch? And I was like, okay. He handed me a bowl of ice cream and poured me a red wine with some water. I was like, I'm 16. What is this? And unfortunately, his missus wasn't in because she would have taken slightly better care of me. But and he just proceeded to be on all fours running around the house with his child whilst I just sat there thinking, do I drink the wine or not?
Previously on Life with Brian.
By the way, I know you're favourites. He said, I'd just like to say, you're fucking better one, because I've got 10 grand on you.
There I was, sitting on set with Brendan Gleeson while he was doing a monologue while I'm clutching my sphincter.
And then one day he rings me up and he says, can I let you into a secret? And I said, yeah, I thought he was going to tell us he was like a Tory or something like that. It's like, this is just a character that I do.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Here we go again. It's the quiz. And this time it's particularly pertinent to one of its participants. No, not you, Chucky. We've called this one Gordon or Jordan. And here's why.
Brilliant.
We're giving you the usual 5 alternate questions, like a penalty shootout, to tell us whether the facts we're presenting to you are true of either Gordon McQueen, Hayley's dad, of course, or his former Leeds, Manchester United and Scotland teammate and great friend, Joe Jordan. So if you think the answer is McQueen, say Gordon. And if you think it's Jordan, say Jordan. I think that's pretty easy to understand.
Okay.
And Hayley, as you're our guest, you get to go first.
Okay.
So, who made their Scotland debut first?
Oh, maybe Jordan.
You take an early 1-0 lead. It was Joe Jordan. He first played for the national team in May 1973 as a sub against England, beating your dad, Gordon, who debuted against Belgium around a year later. So 1-0.
Okay, Ryan, over to you. You get underway.
You said that with far too much gusto there, 1-0. I'm not even asked the question yet.
Ryan's a little bit paranoid that we try and stitch him up on this quiz.
Yeah,
absolutely don't. Absolutely don't.
Yeah.
So
You're right.
Here's your chance, Brian. You get underway with this one. Who scored more goals in Scottish League football?
Oh, Gordon.
Yes, no foul play here. McQueen takes this one, having netted 5 times for St Mirren to just the 1 for Joe in his short time with Morton.
Oh.
Are you going to say that was a guess, Brian, or are you going to claim you knew that?
No, I couldn't remember which team Joe had played for, but I knew that Gordon had played for St Mirren, for quite a few games, so...
Yeah, we were going for the double bluff there. But, all right, so 1s each. And Hayley, your next spot kick is who played most league games for Manchester United?
Oh, probably Jordan.
Well, we've got our first miss. It was a Gordon. Yeah, your dad wins this one by 184 to 109. So,
Oh wow, a lot more. Okay.
Yeah, Brian's got the opportunity to sneak into an early advantage.
Let's see how he does under pressure. Jockey, your second penalty is this. They both joined Manchester United within a month of each other in early 1978. But whose transfer fee was higher?
Gordon.
Okay.
500 to 350.
Oh, well, I've got
hang
it
on a
written here.
second.
I've got
Steward's inquiry.
Yeah, have you been looking over my shoulder?
I was a United fan, man. And this is the sort of things you're interested in, particularly when Scottish players are going to sign for Manchester United.
Yeah, okay.
You nerd.
Yeah.
You're a nerd.
We all know Trevor Francis was the first £1 million player, but I'm like, my dad was the first £500,000.
Yeah.
There you go. In fact, officially, did you know he went for 499,999 because he didn't want to be the first £500,000 player?
In that case, then Brian's. Do you lose a point?
I guess it's a new piece of information for me now. I'll take that stuff in there now.
All right, so 2-1, Brian. Hayley, you're playing catch up now, and your third attempt is this.
Okay.
En route to the 1975 European Cup final, who scored the most goals for Leeds in that run?
Oh, I don't know. Leeds. I don't know. It might have been my dad, It might have been Gordon.
Well, I don't know if that was just a stab in the dark, but you're right. It is a Gordon.
A couple.
Centre back beats centre forward again by 3 goals to 2. So we're back to 2-2, but Jockey's up next.
Okay, your third spot kick, Brian, is this. Who played the most games at World Cup finals?
Jordan.
Yeah, you're going to claim you know these numbers as well?
Not that bad.
Okay. Joe played in all 6 Scotland games at the 74 and 78 finals, scoring 3 times in the process, while Gordon wasn't given a single minute at either tournament.
Because he broke his foot. He did his metatarsal before you did a metatarsal.
It was just a foot in them days.
He flew to Argentina and then, flew him straight home. He got injured the first day in Argentina.
Oh, dear.
Training. He said the biggest, he said that was the worst thing that ever happened to him in his life. There you go.
Okay.
It might have been worse to actually play in that tournament.
True.
Yeah. No stigma attached ever since, no. Okay, Hayley, still playing catch-up, and penalty number 4 is this. Both men scored in a 4-0 Scotland win against Norway on the 7th of June, 1979, but who scored first in that match?
Oh. Jordan?
It is Jordan, yeah. He netted Scotland's opener on the 32nd minute, while your dad scored the 4th in the 54th minute, with goals by John Robertson and Kenny Dalglish sandwiched between the two. So that, I think, is 3-3.
Yeah, I think we're level.
And Brian again, yeah.
Brian, your penultimate penalty. Which one of these former Manchester United heroes was born closest to Old Trafford?
Oh.
If you didn't read this in Shooting Match, you just have to guess.
Jordan.
It is Jordan. I'm going to ask you if you know, or it was just a stab in the dark.
Lanarkshire's closer than Ayrshire.
Oh, yeah. Joe was born in Cleland, North Lanarkshire, 204 miles away from United's ground, while Gordon was born in Kilbirnie, in Ayrshire, 228 miles away. So great deduction there.
Yeah, Brian's intimate knowledge of the N74 and the M6 there. Okay, so what are we at? I think that's 4-3 to Brian. So, Hayley, you've got to get this one to at least get the pressure on. So, the 5th and final penalty. Who has the most FA Cup winners' medals?
Gordon.
Yes, it is Gordon. They did both play in United's defeat to Arsenal in 1979, but your dad's win in 1983 against Brighton takes this particular question. So it's 4. I think that's 4-4. And now down to the decider.
Okay.
My mum was heavily pregnant and went to that match in Brighton, and the maternity brand at the time had these little blue birds on it. She wore a white dress covered in blue birds. Yeah, she said she looked like she turned up as the club mascot. So funny. Anyway, that's what I remember from that.
Brian, you can finish it. And this is the final one. Whose full name would score the most in a game of Scrabble?
Gordon McQueen.
You fired that one very quickly, and you've missed. It's Jordan.
Oh, really? With the Q's and the...
Is he talking about middle names and all that now? Is it? Yeah.
Well, from what I can tell, there's no middle names.
No, we don't have them in Scotland.
Yeah, it's
really.
Joseph
Do you
Jordan.
have one, Brian?
John.
Oh, is it? Oh.
So Joseph Jordan wins by 32 points to 28 against Gordon McQueen. So I think we've got a draw, haven't we?
We have, That would have been Brian's. That would have been Brian's first ever 100% if he'd managed that. But
knowing Brian, he missed it on purpose just because he wouldn't want that accolade.
Thank you.
I wouldn't do that.
I'm sure you would.
It's got to be fair. The quiz is always fair.
Well,
robust.
You'll both be glad to know there's no tie break, so honours even.
Honours even. You get to share the trophy for 6 months each. And as is now customary, we're wrapping up the episode with Focus On, a chance for us to ask our guests some searching quickfire questions taken from the old Shoot magazine features of the same name. Unsurprisingly, when we trawled the internet, we found a few from, you've guessed it, Gordon McQueen. One from about 1973 when he was at Leeds, one from 1977, and another from around 1981. And we've pulled a few out for Hayley, and we'll reveal some of her dad's answers as we go along. So, Hayley, are you ready?
Yes, ready.
Okay. Your full name?
Hayley McQueen.
Birthplace and date?
9th of December.
Yeah, the 9th of December, 1979, Manchester.
Children?
1.
And from 1981, your dad said, daughter Hayley and another due any time. So which one of your siblings was that?
Anna.
So she got a what's the opposite of posthumous shout out? A prenatal shout out there.
Yeah.
And favorite other team?
Oh, so Man United is my team, but my favourite other team is Middlesbrough.
Yeah, your dad gave different answers in these. He said Glasgow Rangers, actually, in two of them. And the other one, he said Kilburney Ladeside.
Yeah. They've just named a stand after him, which is really cool, just last week.
I saw that.
Yeah, the little, it's like part of the stand. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biggest disappointment?
Biggest disappointment? Don't know. Could you call? I guess my dad's illness was a disappointment. I mean, career-wise, it's been fine. When you've been let down and disappointments happen, you just move on and learn from it. But biggest disappointment was probably, losing my dad, which felt like quite early, really, in life.
He gave 3 different answers, as you can imagine, in 3 different interviews. He said the 1973 European Cup Winners' Cup loss to Milan. Missing the 1975 European Cup final due to suspension and losing the 1979 FA Cup final to Arsenal. So all regrets there. Your biggest dislikes?
Oh, God, my biggest dislikes. Aperol Spritz. Everyone loves them. I think they're disgusting.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That goes your Christmas present, Brian.
Metal coat hangers. Hate them. Hate them. And rude people. Just be kind. You don't need to be rude. That's it.
Yeah. Your dad gave a number of answers, but 2 recurring ones were shaving and washing the car.
Oh, shaving. Yeah. Hated shaving.
I guess there's no prizes for guessing who used to wash the car then in that family.
Yeah. 3 kids, actually.
You could have washed Ravanelli's for £50 a go.
Oh, could have. Yeah, that would have been good.
Your favourite food?
Me? Oh, I love Thai food. Thai curry. Love Thai.
Your dad's recurring answer
was
chocolate.
It's a red curry.
Oh, chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate was your dad's recurring answer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Cadbury's obsessed, loved it. Used to have
do you know what? I think
match.
I think he even says in one of the things,
Cadbury's.
anything Cadbury's. Yeah,
anything. He loved Cadbury's. We couldn't have any chocolate in the house because he would eat it all. We never had chocolate ever, because he couldn't stop himself.
Your favorite actors?
Oh, my favorite actors. Oh gosh. Female actors. I mean, I grew up loving someone like Cameron Diaz. I loved Drew Barrymore. I love Kate Winslet. Yeah.
Your dad gave very different answers to that. His was Clint Eastwood, and somebody I had to look up. It was Paul Lutti.
Paul Lutti, was he out in a westerns or something? He loved his films.
No, he was a wrestler turned actor who ended up in Coronation Street. So, no idea. It's a very 1970s answer.
Wow,
if only the interviewer dug into that a bit further. I mean, there's so many questions there.
Right, no idea. Your favourite singer or group?
Oh, favourite singer or group? I mean, I loved Nirvana. They were probably my favourite band growing up. Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, that'll do. We only have to give one.
Is that enough? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, your dad, obviously your dad gave a different set of answers across the span of those different interviews.
Cat Stevens will have been one, wouldn't it?
That was one of them, yeah. But the one that kept coming up each time was Moody Blues.
Oh, yeah, it's Justin, Justin Hayward.
Yeah, he obviously he was the singer. He cropped up too. And finally, if not a broadcaster, obviously your dad's answer was a footballer. What would you do?
Probably teach. I quite fancy getting into teaching. Yeah, I mean, I've only got one child, though. I don't know how I'd manage more than one, but working with people. Yeah, and
I think your dad's tongue was placed firmly in his cheek when he said, "What would you be if you weren't a footballer?" Well, at 6'4" and 13 or 14 stone, of course, he had to say jockey, didn't he?
Oh my God. Oh dear.
Okay, right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, and all that's left to say is our thank yous and goodbyes. And firstly, of course, it's been a huge pleasure having you on, Hayley. Really, really appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hayley.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. It was fun.
Great. And Jockey and Matthew, thanks to you both.
No, let's do it again sometime soon.
We will. And thanks to you out there for listening. Subscribe through all the usual podcast channels. Follow us on X and Blue Sky at Brian McClare Pod, and Instagram at Life with Brian Pod. And join us again next time, please, when we'll be joined by another guest. Bye for now.
Life with Brian. Life with Brian. Talking films or music. Life with Brian. Talking TV and food. Life with Brian. Talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian is different every episode. Life with Brian, talking politics and football. Life with Brian is different every episode. Life with Brian, Life with Brian.